Part 1. At my granddaughter's wedding, I looked down at my place card and saw that it didn't say grandmother of the bride. It said, Clara Bennett, main sponsor, seat wherever there's room. For a moment, I thought my eyes had failed me. At 68, I had accepted many little betrayals that come with age. People spoke over me. Waiters called me sweetheart, as if I were a child. My son rushed me off the phone because he was always in the middle of something. But this was different. This was printed, in black ink, on thick ivory cardstock with gold trim. The same cardstock I had paid for. I stood there in the lobby of the Rosewood Grand Hotel, surrounded by flower arrangements taller than I was, holding that little rectangle of humiliation in my hand while guests moved around me in silk dresses and dark suits. A young woman at the welcome table smiled nervously. "Is there a problem, ma'am?" I wanted to say yes. I wanted to tell her that my granddaughter's wedding planner had just handed me proof that my family no longer saw me as a person. I wanted to ask who had approved this. My son Daniel, his wife Vivian, my granddaughter Emily. But I did none of those things. I smiled. "No," I said softly. "There's no problem." Then I tucked the card into my small silver purse and walked into the ballroom with my head held high. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. I had always believed weddings should be sacred, not because of the flowers or the expensive food or the music, but because they were one of the few times a family gathered and promised, at least for one day, to remember what love was supposed to look like. Emily's wedding was supposed to be that kind of day. She was my oldest granddaughter, 26 years old, with her mother's dark hair and my late husband's stubborn chin. When she was little, she used to climb into my lap and ask me to tell her stories about Grandpa Thomas before he got old. She had been only 19 when Thomas passed, but he adored her. He used to say Emily had a mind like a bright kitchen window, always letting light in. So when Daniel called 8 months earlier and told me Emily was engaged, I cried right there at my kitchen table. Not loud crying. Just the kind that slips out when joy touches an old bruise. Thomas should have been there to hear it. He should have been there to watch Emily walk down the aisle. He should have been there to squeeze my hand when the organ started playing, the way he always did when he knew I was about to become emotional in public. But Thomas had been gone 4 years, and since his death, I had learned that grief does not only take the person you loved. Sometimes it takes the family structure that person had been holding together. Daniel changed first. My son had always been ambitious, but after Thomas died, his ambition hardened into something colder. He started talking about managing family resources and protecting generational wealth, words that sounded responsible until I realized he was mostly talking about my bank accounts. Vivian changed even faster. Or perhaps she never changed. Perhaps I simply saw her clearly for the first time. My daughter-in-law had always been polished. Perfect hair, perfect nails, perfect smile. She could insult you so gently that you only felt the wound later, when you were alone. At church, she would touch my arm and say, "Clara is so independent for her age." At family dinners, she would say, "We try not to overwhelm her with too many decisions." When Daniel asked if I wanted to be involved in planning Emily's wedding, Vivian answered before I could, "Oh, Mom has done enough. Let her just enjoy being a guest." A guest. That word stayed with me. I had paid the deposit for the Rosewood Grand Hotel because Daniel said the venue was Emily's dream, but a little beyond their comfort zone. I paid for the flowers when Vivian told me Emily cried after learning peonies were out of season and expensive. I paid for the string quartet because Emily had once said, years ago, that she wanted to walk down the aisle to live music. I paid quietly. Not because they demanded it all at once. That would have been easier to notice. No, it came in pieces. A deposit here. A vendor emergency there. A final balance that had to be settled by Friday, or they might lose the photographer. Every time, Vivian sounded embarrassed. Every time, Daniel promised they would make it right. Every time, I told myself this was for Emily. And because it was for Emily, I wrote the checks. That morning, I spent nearly 2 hours getting ready. I chose a soft lavender dress Thomas had loved. It wasn't new, but it was elegant, with pearl buttons at the cuffs and a neckline that made my shoulders look less narrow. I set my silver hair in loose waves, dabbed a little rose-colored lipstick on my mouth, and fastened the pearl earrings Thomas gave me on our 35th anniversary. Then I stood in front of the mirror in my bedroom and tried to imagine what he would say. "You look beautiful, Clara." I heard his voice so clearly that I had to grip the edge of the dresser. The ceremony took place at St. Matthew's Episcopal Church, the same church where Daniel had been baptized, the same church where we held Thomas's funeral. For a little while, everything felt almost right. Emily looked radiant in her lace gown. Daniel walked her down the aisle, smiling with a pride that made him look briefly like the boy I remembered. Vivian dabbed at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief, perfectly timed, perfectly visible. I sat in the second row, not the first. Vivian had explained that the first row needed to be reserved for immediate family and parents. I almost laughed when she said it, but I did not. I had become very skilled at swallowing small injuries before anyone else could see them. During the vows, I let myself focus only on Emily. Her hands trembled when she placed the ring on Mark's finger. Mark smiled at her as if the rest of the church had disappeared. For those few minutes, I was grateful. Whatever else had happened in our family, the love between those two young people seemed real. After the ceremony, guests drove to the Rosewood Grand for the reception. The hotel ballroom was breathtaking. Crystal chandeliers, white roses, gold chargers, tall candles flickering inside glass hurricanes. Every table looked like something from a bridal magazine. I knew exactly how much it had cost. That knowledge sat quietly in my chest as I approached the welcome table. A young woman in a black dress asked for my name. "Clara Bennett," I said, "grandmother of the bride." She scanned the cards, paused, then pulled one out with a smile that flickered for just a second before becoming professional again. "Here you are, Mrs. Bennett." I took the card, and there it was, Clara Bennett, main sponsor, seat wherever there's room. My fingers went cold, not my hands, just the fingers, one by one, as if the blood had been gently removed from them. I looked up at the young woman. She had seen it. I could tell by the color rising in her cheeks. "I'm sure this is some sort of mistake," she whispered. "I should have handed it back. I should have asked for the wedding planner. I should have made Vivian explain herself in that bright lobby in front of everyone." "Instead," I said, "it's all right." But it was not all right. It was never all right to turn a grandmother into a joke at a wedding she helped create. I walked into the ballroom and found that my table assignment was not near Daniel, not near Vivian, not near Emily, and not even near relatives. I had been placed at table 14, in the back corner, beside the speakers, with Mark's father's golf friends and two distant cousins I had not seen in 15 years. From where I sat, I could see the head table glowing beneath a canopy of flowers. Daniel sat there. Vivian sat beside him. Emily and Mark sat in the center, beautiful and happy and unaware, or perhaps simply unwilling to notice. I placed my purse on my lap and folded my hands over it. Several people glanced at my place card because I had set it beside my water glass. Some looked away quickly. Others smiled as if they thought it was funny but were not sure whether I was in on the joke. I was not. During cocktail hour, I tried to behave normally. I accepted a glass of sparkling water. I complimented a woman on her dress. I told Mark's aunt that the ceremony had been lovely. Then I heard laughter behind one of the tall floral arrangements. "Did you see Clara's card?" a woman whispered. Another voice answered. Vivian said it was just a little joke. Apparently, she paid for half the wedding. "Half?" someone else said. From what I heard, she paid for nearly all of it. Then came the sentence that seemed to press directly against my ribs. "Well, if you're going to be the family checkbook, you might as well get a title." They laughed. Not loudly. That would have been kinder. Quiet laughter is worse because it means people know enough to hide it, but not enough to stop. I turned away before they could see my face. My cheeks were warm. My throat felt tight, but I did not cry. Not there. Not with mascara on and my husband's pearls at my ears. A few minutes later, Daniel waved me over to a group of guests near the bar. "Mom," he called, bright and careless. "Come here. I want you to meet some people." I walked over slowly. "This is Greg and Linda Walters," Daniel said. "Greg and Dad used to know each other through the Rotary Club." Greg Walters turned toward me with immediate warmth. "Clara Bennett," he said. "Of course. Thomas spoke of you all the time. His kindness almost undid me." Before I could respond, Daniel laughed and added, "Mom's the reason this whole thing looks like a royal wedding. We call her the emergency fund with legs." Greg's smile vanished. Linda's eyes moved to my face, then to the place card still in my hand. I looked at my son. There are moments when a mother sees not the child she raised, but the man he has chosen to become. Daniel did not look ashamed. He looked amused. "Daniel," I said quietly. "That's enough." He blinked, surprised, then chuckled under his breath. "Oh, Mom. Don't be sensitive. It's a wedding. Everyone's having fun." "Not everyone," I said. His smile tightened. Before he could answer, Vivian appeared beside him in a champagne-colored gown that shimmered every time she moved. She looked expensive. She always did. Her eyes dropped to my place card, and something pleased flashed across her face before she covered it with concern. "Clara," she said, touching my arm. "You found your seat?" "I did. I hope you didn't mind the little joke. Emily wanted the wedding to feel personal." "Emily wrote this?" I asked. Vivian hesitated for half a breath. "That was all I needed." "Well," she said, "we all helped with the details." Daniel cleared his throat. "Mom, don't turn this into something." I looked at them both, standing there in the ballroom I had helped pay for, surrounded by flowers I had paid for, drinking champagne I had paid for, while asking me not to turn their public insult into something uncomfortable. "I need some air," I said. Vivian gave a small sigh, the kind meant to make me look difficult. I walked toward the hallway, past the restrooms, past the framed mirrors and gold sconces, until I found a quiet alcove near a side exit. Only then did I open my purse and look at the place card again. Main sponsor. Seat wherever there's room. My name had become an invoice. I pressed one hand against the wall and closed my eyes. "Mrs. Bennett?" The voice was male, careful, familiar. I opened my eyes and saw Warren Pierce, Thomas's attorney, standing a few feet away in a dark suit with a folded program in his hand. Warren had handled Thomas's estate after the funeral. He had always been kind to me, not in a sentimental way, but with the steady respect of someone who understood grief did not make a woman helpless. "I thought that was you," he said. "Are you all right?" I slipped the place card into my palm, but not quickly enough. He saw it. His expression changed. Not shock. Anger. Quiet, controlled anger. "May I?" he asked. I handed it to him. He read the words once. Then again, his jaw tightened. "Who approved this?" I suppose Vivian would call it a joke. "It isn't." "No," I said. "It isn't." Music swelled from inside the ballroom. Someone announced the wedding party. Guests began clapping. Life continued loudly just a few doors away while I stood in a hallway, holding the remains of my dignity together with both hands. Warren lowered his voice. "Clara, there's something Thomas asked me not to discuss with you unless it became necessary." I looked at him. The hallway seemed to narrow. "What do you mean?" He reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and removed a sealed envelope. My name was written across the front in Thomas's handwriting. My knees weakened so suddenly that Warren reached for my elbow. "I'm all right," I whispered. But I was not. Thomas's handwriting could still do that to me. Warren held the envelope carefully, as if it were something sacred. "Before Thomas passed, he added a condition to the family trust," he said. "He was concerned about how you might be treated after he was gone." I stared at him. "Concerned?" Warren's eyes moved toward the ballroom doors. "He saw more than he told you. Daniel's impatience. Vivian's interest in the estate. The way certain conversations changed whenever money came up." My mouth went dry. "What condition?" Warren hesitated. "Any family member who publicly humiliates you, attempts to pressure you financially, or treats you as incompetent for personal gain can forfeit their share of the trust." For a moment, I heard nothing. Not the music. Not the applause. Not the muffled voice of the wedding DJ. Only Thomas. My Thomas. Still protecting me from a place I could not reach. I looked down at the place card in Warren's hand. "Would this count?" I asked. His face hardened. "Yes, Clara. It would. Through the ballroom doors, I heard Daniel laughing. Vivian's voice followed, bright and smooth, floating above the music like perfume covering something spoiled. They had no idea. They thought they had embarrassed an old woman in front of a room full of people and gotten away with it. They thought I would do what I always did. Smile. Stay quiet. Write another check. Warren folded the place card and handed it back to me. What would you like to do? I looked toward the ballroom where my family was celebrating beneath chandeliers they could not afford without me. Then I placed the card back into my purse. Nothing, I said. Warren frowned slightly. Nothing? Not yet. I smoothed the front of my lavender dress, touched the pearls at my ears, and took one slow breath. I want to see just how far they're willing to go. Then I walked back into the ballroom, and for the first time that day, the place card in my purse did not feel like humiliation. It felt like evidence. Tart, too. When I walked back into the ballroom, no one seemed to notice that anything had changed. That was the strange thing about humiliation. To the person receiving it, the whole world tilts. The lights look sharper. The music sounds farther away. Every smile in the room feels like it might be hiding a secret. But to everyone else, the evening simply continues. The string quartet played something soft near the dance floor. Waiters moved between tables with trays of champagne. Emily and Mark stood beneath a wall of white roses, greeting guests who kissed their cheeks and told them how beautiful everything was. And it was beautiful. That was what hurt. The wedding was beautiful because I had made sure it could be. I returned to table 14 and sat down quietly. The two distant cousins across from me were discussing a trip to Arizona. One of Mark's father's golf friends was complaining about airport parking. No one asked where I had gone. No one asked if I was all right. I placed my napkin in my lap and kept my purse close against my side. Inside, it was the place card. Inside, it was Thomas's last protection. And somehow, that small knowledge steadied me more than any comforting word could have. Vivian passed by our table a few minutes later, moving slowly, making sure people saw her. She stopped to kiss an elderly aunt on the cheek, adjusted one of the floral arrangements, then glanced toward me. Our eyes met. She smiled. Not warmly, not kindly. It was the kind of smile a woman gives when she believes she has won something no one else knows she was fighting for. I gave her a small smile back. That seemed to confuse her. For years, Vivian had known exactly how to handle me. A little sweetness, a little guilt, a little pressure through Daniel. She had learned that I would do almost anything to avoid making my son uncomfortable. If she wanted money, she never asked directly. She let Daniel call me with that tired voice of his. Mom, the photographer needs the final payment by Friday. Mom, the flowers cost more than expected. Mom, Emily has her heart set on this venue. And each time, Vivian stayed in the background, clean-handed and grateful-looking. I had mistaken that for tact. Now I understood it was strategy. Dinner was served shortly after. I looked down at the plate in front of me. Herb-roasted chicken, asparagus, a small square of potato gratin. It looked elegant and expensive, but I could barely swallow. At the head table, Daniel rose to give his toast. He tapped his glass, waited for the room to quiet, then smiled at Emily. My little girl, he began, his voice thick with practiced emotion. People softened around me. A few women lifted tissues to their eyes. Daniel spoke about fatherhood, about watching Emily grow, about how proud he was to welcome Mark into the family. Then he paused and looked toward Vivian. And none of this would have been possible without my incredible wife, he said. Vivian, you made this dream come true. The room applauded. Vivian lowered her eyes as if overwhelmed by modesty. I sat very still. Not one mention of Thomas. Not one mention of me. Not one word about the woman sitting in the back corner, beside the speakers, who had written check after check so this dream could come true. I told myself to breathe. Slowly. Quietly. A mother can survive many things. Being forgotten is one of them. Being erased while sitting in the same room is another. Then Daniel lifted his glass again. And of course, he added with a laugh, we had some generous help along the way. Several people turned to look at me. Not all of them. Just enough. A ripple of amused recognition moved through the ballroom. Someone at a nearby table chuckled. I heard the word sponsor whispered behind me. Daniel smiled as if he had said something charming. Vivian laughed softly into her champagne glass. I looked down at my hands. They were folded neatly in my lap. The skin was thinner now, the veins more visible. My wedding ring sat loose on my finger because I had lost weight after Thomas died and never bothered to have it resized. Those hands had held Daniel when he had a fever. They had packed his school lunches. They had signed his college tuition checks. They had held Thomas's hand in the hospital when the machines grew quiet. And now those same hands rested silently while my son turned me into a punchline. I did not stand. I did not cry. I did not correct him. I simply reached into my purse, touched the edge of the place card, and reminded myself that some people do not reveal who they are all at once. They do it in public, believing your silence means permission. By the time the first dance began, I had made my decision. I would stay until the end. I would smile when spoken to. I would let Vivian enjoy the evening she thought she controlled. And I would watch. Because Warren was right. Before I used Thomas's final gift, I needed to know just how far they were willing to go. Tart, too. When I walked back into the ballroom, no one seemed to notice that anything had changed. That was the strange thing about humiliation. To the person receiving it, the whole world tilts. The lights look sharper. The music sounds farther away. Every smile in the room feels like it might be hiding a secret. But to everyone else, the evening simply continues. The string quartet played something soft near the dance floor. Waiters moved between tables with trays of champagne. Emily and Mark stood beneath a wall of white roses, greeting guests who kissed their cheeks and told them how beautiful everything was. And it was beautiful. That was what hurt. The wedding was beautiful because I had made sure it could be. I returned to table 14 and sat down quietly. The two distant cousins across from me were discussing a trip to Arizona. One of Mark's father's golf friends was complaining about airport parking. No one asked where I had gone. No one asked if I was all right. I placed my napkin in my lap and kept my purse close against my side. Inside, it was the place card. Inside, it was Thomas's last protection. And somehow, that small knowledge steadied me more than any comforting word could have. Vivian passed by our table a few minutes later, moving slowly, making sure people saw her. She stopped to kiss an elderly aunt on the cheek, adjusted one of the floral arrangements, then glanced toward me. Our eyes met. She smiled. Not warmly, not kindly. It was the kind of smile a woman gives when she believes she has won something no one else knows she was fighting for. I gave her a small smile back. That seemed to confuse her. For years, Vivian had known exactly how to handle me. A little sweetness, a little guilt, a little pressure through Daniel. She had learned that I would do almost anything to avoid making my son uncomfortable. If she wanted money, she never asked directly. She let Daniel call me with that tired voice of his. Mom, the photographer needs the final payment by Friday. Mom, the flowers cost more than expected. Mom, Emily has her heart set on this venue. And each time, Vivian stayed in the background, clean-handed and grateful-looking. I had mistaken that for tact. Now I understood it was strategy. Dinner was served shortly after. I looked down at the plate in front of me. Herb-roasted chicken, asparagus, a small square of potato gratin. It looked elegant and expensive, but I could barely swallow. At the head table, Daniel rose to give his toast. He tapped his glass, waited for the room to quiet, then smiled at Emily. My little girl, he began, his voice thick with practiced emotion. People softened around me. A few women lifted tissues to their eyes. Daniel spoke about fatherhood, about watching Emily grow, about how proud he was to welcome Mark into the family. Then he paused and looked toward Vivian. And none of this would have been possible without my incredible wife, he said. Vivian, you made this dream come true. The room applauded. Vivian lowered her eyes as if overwhelmed by modesty. I sat very still. Not one mention of Thomas. Not one mention of me. Not one word about the woman sitting in the back corner, beside the speakers, who had written check after check so this dream could come true. I told myself to breathe. Slowly. Quietly. A mother can survive many things. Being forgotten is one of them. Being erased while sitting in the same room is another. Then Daniel lifted his glass again. And of course, he added with a laugh, we had some generous help along the way. Several people turned to look at me. Not all of them. Just enough. A ripple of amused recognition moved through the ballroom. Someone at a nearby table chuckled. I heard the word sponsor whispered behind me. Daniel smiled as if he had said something charming. Vivian laughed softly into her champagne glass. I looked down at my hands. They were folded neatly in my lap. The skin was thinner now, the veins more visible. My wedding ring sat loose on my finger because I had lost weight after Thomas died and never bothered to have it resized. Those hands had held Daniel when he had a fever. They had packed his school lunches. They had signed his college tuition checks. They had held Thomas's hand in the hospital when the machines grew quiet. And now those same hands rested silently while my son turned me into a punchline. I did not stand. I did not cry. I did not correct him. I simply reached into my purse, touched the edge of the place card, and reminded myself that some people do not reveal who they are all at once. They do it in public, believing your silence means permission. By the time the first dance began, I had made my decision. I would stay until the end. I would smile when spoken to. I would let Vivian enjoy the evening she thought she controlled. And I would watch. Because Warren was right. Before I used Thomas's final gift, I needed to know just how far they were willing to go. Tart 3. I stayed through the salad course, the speeches, and the first dance. Not because I wanted to. Because leaving would have made everything too simple for them. Vivian would have sighed and told people I had become emotional. Daniel would have apologized for me with that tired little smile he used whenever he wanted sympathy. By morning, the story would no longer be about what they had done. It would be about how I had overreacted. So I stayed. I sat at table 14 with my back straight, my hands folded, and Thomas's pearls resting against my neck like a quiet reminder. The ballroom grew louder as the evening went on. Wine loosened voices. Music softened judgment. People began saying things they might have kept inside during daylight. That was when I learned the place card had not been a mistake. I was walking toward the restroom when I heard Vivian's voice coming from the small hallway near the coat check. She took it better than I expected, she said. I stopped before turning the corner. Daniel answered, lower, uneasy. You shouldn't have printed it that way. Oh, please, Vivian said. Everyone knows she paid. At least we made it funny. My body went very still. There are sentences that cut slowly. That one did. Daniel said nothing. Vivian continued, her tone light and careless. Besides, your mother needs to understand her role. She wants to be included? Fine. Then she can contribute without acting like the whole family revolves around her. I pressed one hand against the wall. Her role. Not grandmother. Not mother. Not widow of the man who helped build everything Daniel now enjoyed. Her role. A checkbook with gray hair. Daniel murmured something I couldn't hear. Then Vivian laughed softly. Don't look guilty. She'll get over it. She always does. And after tonight, we still need to talk to her about the honeymoon upgrade. Emily mentioned Italy again. My throat tightened. Italy. The wedding was not even over, and they were already planning the next request. Daniel said, Vivian, maybe we should wait. No, she replied. We need to ask while she's emotional. Weddings make old people sentimental. Old people. I closed my eyes for 1 second. Not to cry. To steady myself. Because in that hallway, hidden behind a corner while music played and guests applauded in the ballroom, I finally heard the truth without decoration. Vivian did not misunderstand me. She did not accidentally hurt me. She studied me. She knew which memories to touch, which names to mention, which moments would make me open my purse and write another check. And Daniel knew enough to be uncomfortable, but not enough to stop her. That was a different kind of betrayal. I stepped back before they could see me and returned to the ballroom by another hallway. When I passed the gift table, I noticed a white envelope box decorated with silk ribbon. Beside, it was a framed sign that said, Cards and blessings for Emily and Mark. I wondered how many blessings in that box came from people who had laughed at my place card. I wondered how many people knew. At the head table, Emily was laughing with her bridesmaids. She looked so young, so happy, so untouched by the ugliness circling around her. For a moment, I wanted to believe she knew nothing. Then I saw it. Emily leaned toward Vivian, whispered something, and pointed toward me. Vivian smiled. Emily covered her mouth, laughing. It was a small laugh. Barely anything. But I saw it. And something inside me settled into place. Not broke. Settled. There is a difference. Breaking is loud. Settling is quiet. It is the moment your heart stops begging people to be better than they are. I returned to my seat and took the place card from my purse. I laid it on the table beside my water glass. Not hidden anymore. Let them see it. Let them laugh. Let them feel safe. Because by then, I understood what Thomas had understood before he died. Some people only show their true faces when they believe you have no power left. Part 4. I left the wedding just after the cake was cut. No one tried to stop me. That was another answer. I walked past the gift table, past the white roses, past the bar where Daniel was laughing with Mark's father, and out through the lobby of the Rosewood Grand Hotel. The young woman from the welcome table saw me leaving. Her eyes dropped to my purse, as if she knew the place card was still inside it. "I hope you have a good evening, Mrs. Bennet," she said softly. I looked at her for a moment. She was young enough to still believe families were mostly good and cruel things were accidents. "Thank you, dear," I said. Outside, the night air felt cold against my face. My driver asked if I had enjoyed the wedding. I told him it was beautiful. And it was. That was the cruelest part. When I got home, my house was dark except for the lamp I always left on in the front window. Thomas had started that habit years ago, saying no one should ever come home to a house that looked empty. I unlocked the door, stepped inside, and stood very still. No music, no laughter, no speeches. Just the quiet hum of the refrigerator and the old clock ticking in the hallway. I took off my shoes near the stairs. My feet ached, but not as much as the place beneath my ribs. In the kitchen, I placed my silver purse on the table and removed the card. Clara Bennet, main sponsor. Seat wherever there's room. I set it down beside the salt shaker. For a long time, I just stared at it. Then I opened the drawer where I kept my checkbook records. I don't know why I did it. Maybe because humiliation becomes easier to understand when it has numbers attached to it. Maybe because a part of me still needed proof that I had not imagined the pattern. The first check was for the venue deposit, $12,000. I remembered Daniel's voice on the phone. He had sounded embarrassed, almost boyish. "Mom, I hate to ask, but Emily fell in love with this place." The second check was for flowers, $8,400. Vivian had told me the cheaper arrangements looked a little funeral-like, and of course no grandmother wanted her granddaughter's wedding to feel sad. The third was for the photographer, then the string quartet, then the custom cake. Then the final catering balance that somehow became urgent 3 days before the deadline. Each check had a memory attached to it. Each memory had a soft voice. "Just this once. We'll pay you back. You know how much Emily loves you." I had never asked to be thanked publicly. I did not need my name in the program or a toast in the ballroom. Thomas and I had raised Daniel not to make generosity into a performance. But there is a difference between not needing applause and accepting disrespect. That was what I understood at my kitchen table after midnight. I had confused humility with silence. I had confused love with usefulness. I had confused being needed with being valued. The clock struck 1. I went upstairs and changed out of the lavender dress. I hung it carefully in the closet because Thomas had loved that dress, and I refused to let Vivian's cruelty become attached to everything beautiful I still owned. Then I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at Thomas's photograph on the nightstand. He was smiling in that picture, standing beside the lake during our last anniversary trip. Wind had messed up his hair. His shirt was half untucked. He looked happy. "You knew," I whispered. The room gave no answer. But the envelope Warren had shown me was real. Thomas had seen the greed before I did. He had watched Daniel grow impatient around money. He had watched Vivian's eyes sharpen whenever estate matters came up. He had loved me enough to leave protection behind, even while knowing it would break my heart to need it. I took the place card from my purse and placed it beside Thomas's photograph, not as a wound, as evidence. Then I turned off the lamp and sat in the dark for several minutes. By morning, Daniel would probably call with a casual apology. Vivian would probably say the card was a misunderstanding. Emily might send a sweet message with a heart emoji and no responsibility. But I was done measuring love by excuses. That night, for the first time in 4 years, I slept on Thomas's side of the bed. Not because I missed him less, because I needed to remember what it felt like to be protected. Tart 5. The next morning, I woke before sunrise. For a few seconds, I forgot what had happened. I lay there in the gray light, listening to the old house settle around me, expecting the ache in my chest to be the familiar one. Missing Thomas. Then I remembered the place card. The ballroom. Daniel's laugh. Vivian's voice in the hallway. Weddings make old people sentimental. I sat up slowly. There are mornings when grief returns like a storm. That morning, it returned like a ledger. Quiet. Precise. Every line accounted for. I put on my robe, went downstairs, and made coffee. The place card was still on the kitchen table beside Thomas's photograph, exactly where I had left it. In daylight, it looked even uglier. Not because of the words themselves, but because of how neat they were. Gold border. Elegant font. Perfect spacing. Someone had taken time with it. My phone rang at 7:42. Daniel. I looked at his name until the screen went dark. 2 minutes later, it rang again. This time, Vivian. I let that call go too. Then came a text from Daniel. Mom, last night got awkward. Vivian says you seemed upset. Can we not make this a big thing? Emily is leaving for her honeymoon soon. I read it twice. Not, are you all right? Not, I'm sorry. Not, that card was cruel. Just, can we not make this a big thing? I placed the phone face down. The old Clara would have called back. She would have smoothed her voice, reassured her son, and apologized for making everyone uncomfortable. She would have told herself that weddings are stressful, people say careless things, families stumble. That woman had kept peace for decades. And look what they had done with it. At 9 o'clock, Warren Pierce called. His voice was steady, but not cold. That was one of the reasons Thomas had trusted him. Warren never used emotion as decoration. When something mattered, he became quieter. Clara, he said, I wanted to check on you. I'm still here. I know. That simple answer almost broke me. Not because it was dramatic, because it was the first kind thing anyone had said since the wedding. He asked if I still had the place card. Yes, I said. It's on my kitchen table. Keep it safe. Don't fold it. Don't throw it away. Don't let anyone else take it. I looked at the little card as if it had changed shape overnight. Warren, what exactly did Thomas put in that trust? He was silent for a moment. Enough to protect you. That isn't an answer. No, he said gently. It's not. But I think you deserve the full truth in person. We arranged to meet that afternoon at his office downtown. Before hanging up, he said one more thing. Clara, don't agree to anything Daniel or Vivian asks of you today. No transfers, no reimbursements, no honeymoon checks, no verbal promises. My hand tightened around the coffee mug. So you think they'll ask? I think they already planned to. After the call ended, I sat very still. The house was bright now. Sunlight spread across the kitchen floor, touching the cabinet Thomas had refinished himself. The little crack in the tile Daniel made when he dropped a baseball trophy at 14. The family calendar where I had written Emily's wedding in blue ink. For months, that date had looked like joy. Now it looked like a warning I had been too hopeful to read. At 10:15, Emily texted, Grandma, I hope you had fun last night. Everything was perfect. Thank you for helping make it happen. Love you. I stared at those words for a long time. There was no mention of the card, no apology, no question. Just gratitude polished smooth enough to avoid responsibility. Maybe she didn't know. Maybe she did. I was tired of building excuses for people who never built any kindness for me. I went to the hall closet and took out a large manila envelope. Into it, I placed the card, copies of the wedding checks, the printed vendor receipts, and the text from Daniel. Then I wrote one word across the front. Wedding. Not revenge. Not betrayal. Just the event name. Because facts do not need anger to become powerful. At noon, I dressed carefully. Navy slacks, cream blouse, Thomas's watch on my wrist. Before leaving, I stood in front of his photograph. "I'm going to find out what you knew," I whispered. Then I picked up the envelope and walked out the door. Tart 6. Warren Pierce's office was on the 3rd floor of an old brick building downtown, above a bakery that still smelled like butter and cinnamon when you stepped into the lobby. Thomas used to love that bakery. He would always buy 2 apple turnovers after meetings with Warren, one for himself and one for me, though he usually took a bite out of mine before handing it over. I thought of that as I climbed the stairs slowly, the manila envelope pressed against my chest. Warren was waiting by the door when I arrived. He did not greet me with pity. I appreciated that. Pity makes a person feel small, and I had felt small enough the night before. "Clara," he said, "come in." His office looked almost exactly the same as I remembered. Dark wood shelves, framed law degrees, a brass lamp on his desk, a photograph of his grandchildren beside a stack of files. He offered coffee. I declined. If I held a cup, my hands might shake. I placed the manila envelope on his desk. "Everything I have so far," I said. He did not open it immediately. Instead, he reached into his desk drawer and took out another folder. It was thick, cream-colored, and labeled in Thomas's handwriting. "Clara, if needed." For a moment, I could not breathe. Warren slid it toward me. "Thomas prepared this 6 months before he passed," he said. My fingers touched the folder, but I did not open it right away. Seeing Thomas's handwriting felt like hearing his voice through a wall. "What did he know?" I asked. Warren leaned back slightly. "He knew Daniel had started asking questions about your accounts. He knew Vivian had contacted his financial advisor twice without authorization. He knew there had been pressure on you to simplify things by adding Daniel's name to certain assets." I remembered those conversations. Daniel standing in my kitchen after Thomas's funeral, telling me it would be easier if he helped manage things. Vivian smiling over his shoulder. "Just so you don't have to worry, Clara." At the time, I had thought they were being practical. Now the memory tasted different. Warren opened the folder and removed several pages. "Thomas changed the trust to make sure your comfort came first. Daniel and Emily were included as future beneficiaries, but only under conditions." "What conditions?" Warren looked at me carefully. "No coercion, no financial pressure, no public humiliation, no attempt to declare you incapable without medical evidence, and no use of family events to manipulate you into giving money." I looked down at the pages. Thomas had known the shape of the trap before I even saw the rope. "If those conditions are violated," I asked, "then distributions can be suspended or revoked." The room was very quiet. Outside the window, traffic moved along the street. Somewhere below, a woman laughed as she left the bakery. Normal life continued while my family's future rearranged itself on Warren's desk. "How much are we talking about?" I asked. Warren paused. "Enough that Daniel would feel it." I closed my eyes, not because I was pleased, because part of me still wished this were not necessary. A mother does not want to win against her child. She wants her child to become someone she does not have to defend herself from. My phone buzzed in my purse. I ignored it. It buzzed again. Warren waited while I took it out. Daniel's name appeared on the screen. Then a text came through. "Mom, Emily, and Mark want to extend the honeymoon to Italy. Vivian says you offered to help if needed. Can you send $15,000 today? We don't want to stress the kids." I stared at the message. There it was. The next request. Less than 24 hours after I had been mocked in a room full of people. I turned the phone so Warren could read it. His jaw tightened. "Do not send that money." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because for the first time, someone had said out loud what I should have said years ago. I typed slowly. "No, Daniel, I will not be sending money." My thumb hovered above the screen. Then I added one more sentence. "Please do not ask me for financial help again until we have discussed what happened at the wedding." I pressed send. The message turned blue. For years, I had believed peace was made by saying yes. But sitting in Warren's office, with Thomas's folder in front of me and Daniel's request still glowing on my phone, I understood something simple. Sometimes peace begins with the first no. Tart 7. Daniel called 30 seconds after my message was marked as read. I watched his name flash across the screen. Once. Twice. A third time. Warren looked at me, but he did not tell me what to do. That was another kindness. He let me decide whether I was ready to hear my son's voice. On the fourth call, I answered. "Mom?" Daniel said before I could speak. "What is going on?" His voice was sharp. Not worried. Not sorry. Sharp. I looked at the folder in front of me, at Thomas's handwriting, and kept my own voice even. "I was going to ask you the same thing." There was a pause. Then Vivian's voice came through faintly in the background. "Put it on speaker." Of course she was there. Daniel exhaled. "Mom, this isn't the time to start drama. Emily just got married. She and Mark are trying to enjoy the happiest week of their lives." "I hope they do," I said. "Then why are you making things difficult?" I looked at Warren. His expression did not change, but his eyes grew colder. "Daniel," I said, "your daughter's wedding place card identified me as the main sponsor and told me to sit wherever there was room." He sighed. Actually sighed. "Mom, it was a joke." "No," I said. "It was printed." That silenced him for half a second. Vivian spoke next, louder now. "Clara, you're choosing to be offended. Everyone knows you helped with the wedding. It was meant to be playful. Was the hallway conversation playful too?" The line went quiet. I could almost see her face changing. "What hallway conversation?" Daniel asked. I waited. Vivian answered too quickly. "I don't know what she means. I did not raise my voice. I did not have to. You said I needed to understand my role. You said weddings make old people sentimental. And you said you needed to ask me about the honeymoon while I was emotional." Daniel said nothing. For once, I was grateful for silence. Vivian recovered first. "That is a complete misrepresentation. Then we can discuss it with Warren present," I said. "Warren?" Daniel asked. "Warren Pierce." Another pause. This one felt different. Daniel knew that name. Vivian did too. Warren was not a family friend they could dismiss. He was Thomas's attorney, the man who knew where every account was, every clause, every signature. "Why are you talking to Dad's lawyer?" Daniel asked. "Because your father had more foresight than I did." Vivian's voice sharpened. "Clara, be very careful. You don't want to damage your relationship with your family over one silly card." There it was, the threat wrapped in concern. I looked at Thomas's folder again. For 4 years, I had been careful. Careful with my words. Careful with Daniel's feelings. Careful not to make Vivian dislike me more than she already did. Careful not to become the difficult old mother people complained about after dinner. And still, they had mocked me. So perhaps being careful had never protected me. It had only protected them. "I'm not damaging this family," I said. "I'm finally naming what has been happening inside it." Daniel made a frustrated sound. "Mom, please, just send the money and we'll talk when they get back." No. One word. So small. So clean. I felt it settle between us like a locked door. Vivian laughed under her breath. "You are being ridiculous." "No," I said. "I am being finished." Then I ended the call. My hands were shaking when I set the phone on Warren's desk, but my voice had not shaken once. That mattered to me. Warren waited a moment before speaking. "You did well." I looked at the phone, expecting it to ring again. It did not. Instead, a text appeared from Daniel. "You're embarrassing yourself." I read it once. Then I turned the phone off. For the first time since Thomas died, I did not feel abandoned by the silence that followed. I felt protected by it. Part 8. When I turned my phone back on that evening, there were 14 missed calls. 7 from Daniel, 4 from Vivian, 2 from Emily, 1 from a number I did not recognize. There were also messages. I did not open them right away. I made tea first. That may sound strange, but there are moments when a small, ordinary act becomes the only thing keeping you from stepping back into old habits. The kettle, the cup, the spoon against the porcelain. They gave my hands something useful to do besides tremble. I sat at the kitchen table with Thomas's folder on one side and the wedding envelope on the other. Then I opened the messages. Daniel's first one was angry. "Mom, you're taking this too far." The second was softer. Please don't make me choose between you and my wife. The third was the one that hurt. Dad wouldn't want this. I stared at that sentence for a long time. There are certain names people use when they want to unlock the door to your guilt. Thomas's name had always been that key for me. But this time, it did not work. Because Thomas had already spoken. He had spoken through the folder on my table, through the clauses in the trust, through the envelope marked in his handwriting. Daniel was wrong. Thomas had wanted exactly this. Not conflict. Protection. Vivian's messages were different. Cleaner. Colder. Clara, you misunderstood a harmless joke. Emily is devastated that you're making her wedding about yourself. We all think it may be time to discuss whether you're under too much stress to manage things alone. I read that last one twice. There it was again. The old threat, dressed in concern. Too stressed. Too emotional. Too old. Not wronged. Not insulted. Not used. Just unstable enough to be dismissed. I placed the phone down and opened my laptop. For years, I had avoided social media except to look at family photos. But that night, I went directly to Vivian's page. She had posted a picture from the wedding. In it, Daniel was giving his toast. Vivian stood beside him, glowing under the ballroom lights. The caption read, "Some people give with love. Others give only when they can control the spotlight." Still, Emily's day was perfect. My stomach tightened. Below it, comments had already begun. What happened? Ignore negativity. You looked beautiful. Some people can't let the next generation shine. Vivian had started the second trial before I had even finished surviving the first. Only this time, the courtroom was public. I took screenshots of everything. Every comment. Every reply. Every little heart Vivian added under people who insulted me without knowing my name. Then I saw Emily had shared the post. Her caption was shorter, trying to stay positive. Please don't ask. I closed my eyes. I wanted to protect her. Even then, some foolish grandmother part of me wanted to believe Emily had been pulled into something she did not understand. But she was 26 years old enough to marry, old enough to accept my money, old enough to laugh when her mother pointed at me, old enough to know silence can be a choice. At 8:13, the unknown number called again. I almost ignored it. Then something made me answer. "Mrs. Bennett?" a woman asked. "My name is Laura Miles. I was the assistant coordinator at Emily's wedding last night." I sat up straighter. "Yes, I'm sorry to bother you," she said. Her voice was nervous, young. "But I couldn't stop thinking about your place card." My hand tightened around the phone. She continued quickly, as if afraid she would lose courage. "I printed the final seating cards. Mrs. Vivian Bennett sent the wording herself. She said it was an inside family joke. I should have questioned it. I didn't. For a moment, I could not speak. "Do you still have that email?" I asked. "Yes," she said. "And the design proof." I looked across the table at Thomas's photograph. The house was silent around me. But this silence felt different from the silence after the wedding. This one was listening. "Laura," I said carefully, "would you be willing to forward those to my attorney?" She exhaled, almost with relief. "Yes, ma'am. I think I should." After we hung up, I did not cry. I simply opened the wedding envelope and wrote down her name. Laura Miles, coordinator, proof of card wording. Then I sat back and looked at the growing stack of evidence. The place card, the checks, the texts, Vivian's post, Emily's share, and now the email. For the first time, Vivian had left fingerprints. Not on silver, not on glass, on paper. And paper, I had learned from Thomas, was where polite lies went to die. Tart 9. Laura's email arrived at 9:04 the next morning. I was standing in the kitchen, still in my robe, waiting for the coffee to finish brewing when my laptop chimed. The subject line was simple. Wedding seating card proofs. My hands paused above the keyboard. For a moment, I did not open it. There are strange pauses before truth becomes permanent. A person can suspect something and still leave one small door open for mercy. Maybe Vivian had not written it. Maybe someone else had changed the wording. Maybe Emily had not known. Maybe Daniel had been careless, but not cruel. Maybe. That word had kept me trapped for years. I opened the email. Laura had written only 3 sentences. Mrs. Bennett, attached, is the final proof approved by Mrs. Vivian Bennett 2 days before the wedding. I am also attaching the email chain where she confirmed the wording. I'm very sorry. Below her message were 2 attachments. The first was the place card design. There it was again. Clara Bennett, main sponsor. Seat wherever there's room. The second attachment was the email chain. Vivian's words were clear. Yes, print exactly as written. It's a family joke. She'll understand. She'll understand. Not she'll laugh. Not she approved it. She'll understand. As if humiliation were a language I had been expected to speak fluently. I forwarded everything to Warren without adding a single word. Then I sat at the kitchen table and drank my coffee while it was still too hot. I needed the sting. Warren called 20 minutes later. His voice was quiet. This is strong evidence, Clara. How strong? Strong enough that Vivian cannot claim it was a printing error. Strong enough that Daniel cannot claim he didn't know once we include the texts and his comments during the toast. I looked toward the hallway where Thomas's old coat still hung on the rack. I had never been able to move it. What happens now? I asked. That depends on you. I almost smiled. People had been deciding things around me for so long that the words sounded unfamiliar. We can issue a formal notice, Warren said. It would inform Daniel and Vivian that their conduct may trigger the forfeiture clause in Thomas's trust. It would also stop any further informal requests for money. I knew what that meant. Once the notice was sent, this would no longer be a family disagreement. It would become real, documented, named. Will Emily be affected? I asked. She may be, Warren said carefully. Especially if we can show she participated or benefited from pressure placed on you. I closed my eyes. There was the wound. Emily, with her lace gown and bright smile. Emily, who used to fall asleep on my sofa with cookie crumbs on her shirt. Emily, who had sent me drawings when Thomas was in the hospital. But Emily was also the young woman who shared Vivian's post. The young woman who thanked me for helping make everything happen but never asked why I left early. The young woman who may have laughed when Vivian pointed at me. Love does not make someone innocent. It only makes the truth hurt more. I don't want to destroy my family, I said. Warren answered gently. Clara, you are not destroying anything by refusing to be used. After we hung up, I got dressed. I chose a plain blue sweater and dark slacks. Nothing formal, nothing dramatic. I did not need armor that looked like armor. At noon, there was a knock at my front door. Not the doorbell. A knock. Hard. Impatient. I looked through the small window beside the door and saw Daniel standing on the porch. Vivian was behind him, arms crossed, her face tight with controlled irritation. For a second, I felt the old instinct rise in me. Open the door. Smooth things over. Offer coffee. Let them explain. Let them turn the room around until I became the one apologizing. Instead, I left the chain lock in place and opened the door only a few inches. Daniel's expression changed when he saw that. Mom, he said, are you really going to treat us like strangers? I looked at my son through the narrow gap. No, Daniel, I said. Strangers have never asked me for $15,000 the morning after humiliating me. Vivian stepped forward. Clara, this has gone far enough. For the first time, I saw something beneath her polished surface. Not guilt. Fear. Small, but there. I held the door steady. You're right, I said. It has. Part 10. Vivian's eyes moved from my face to the chain lock on the door. That tiny strip of brass seemed to offend her more than anything I had said. Clara, she said, lowering her voice, open the door. This is embarrassing. I looked past her to the quiet street behind them. Mrs. Holloway from across the road was watering her porch plants. A delivery truck rolled slowly by. Ordinary life kept moving, even while my son and his wife stood on my porch, asking for access they had not earned. I'm comfortable speaking like this, I said. Daniel rubbed his forehead. Mom, please. We're not here to fight. No, I said. You're here because I stopped paying. His face tightened. Vivian gave a little laugh. That is such an ugly thing to say. Then it should have been uglier to do. For once, she did not answer immediately. Daniel stepped closer to the door. Mom, you're being influenced. Warren is putting ideas in your head. The old Clara would have flinched at that. She would have hated the thought that her son believed she was so easily led. But that morning, standing behind my own door, I saw the pattern clearly. When I gave money, I was generous. When I asked questions, I was confused. When I said no, I was being influenced. I had ideas before Warren, I said. I simply had evidence after him. Vivian's expression shifted. What evidence? I held her gaze. The place card proof. Your email to the coordinator. Daniel's messages. Your post about people wanting the spotlight. Emily's share. The honeymoon request. Daniel turned toward Vivian. What email? Vivian's lips parted, then closed. It was the first honest silence I had heard from her. You told the coordinator to print it exactly as written, I said. You called it a family joke. Daniel stared at her. Vivian? She recovered quickly, but not completely. It was a joke, she said. That's what I've been saying. Clara is twisting this because she wants control. Control of what? I asked. She looked at me as if the answer were obvious. The family. I almost smiled. Not because it was funny, because I finally understood how she saw me. A grandmother wanting basic respect was control. A widow protecting her husband's trust was selfishness. An old woman refusing to write another check was betrayal. You are mistaken, I said. I don't want control of the family. I want control of myself. Daniel's shoulders dropped slightly. Mom, can we just go inside and talk like normal people? I thought of every conversation in my kitchen that had begun that way. Daniel at the table, looking tired. Vivian beside him, speaking gently. Me pouring coffee. Me listening. Me softening. Me saying yes before they even finished asking. No, I said. Daniel blinked. No, you cannot come in today. Vivian's face hardened. This is ridiculous. We are your family. I looked at them through the gap in the door. That sentence used to be enough. It had opened my wallet, opened my home, opened my forgiveness. It had covered lies, excuses, forgotten birthdays, quiet insults, and every small moment when I made myself less so they could feel comfortable taking more. But a word does not stay holy when people use it as a key to rob you. My family would have protected me at that wedding, I said. You performed in front of me. Daniel's eyes lowered. Vivian's did not. She leaned closer. You're going to regret this, Clara. There it was. No sweetness now. No concern. Just the voice underneath. I nodded slowly. Maybe, I said. But not as much as I regret ignoring you for this long. Then I closed the door. I heard Vivian gasp on the other side. Daniel knocked once. Mom. I stood there, hand still on the deadbolt, and waited. He knocked again, softer. I did not answer. After a minute, their footsteps moved away from the porch. A car door opened. Then another. The engine started and faded down the street. Only when the sound disappeared did I breathe out. My hand was shaking against the lock, but the door had stayed closed. And so had I. Tart 11. Warren sent the formal notice 2 days later. He did not ask Daniel for permission to feel ashamed. He did not ask Vivian to explain her intentions. He simply sent the documents by certified mail and email, with copies of the place card proof, Vivian's approval message, Daniel's texts, the public post, and the honeymoon request. Facts laid out in order have a power emotion never could. I received my copy that afternoon. The envelope sat on my kitchen table beside Thomas's photograph. I read every page slowly, not because I doubted Warren, but because I needed to see the truth written in language no one could soften. Public humiliation, financial pressure, attempted manipulation following a family event, potential violation of trust conditions. Those phrases looked cold on paper, but they were not colder than being mocked in a ballroom. Daniel called within an hour. This time, I answered. His voice was different. Not angry, smaller. Mom, he said, what is this? A legal notice. I can read that. I mean, why would you do this? I looked out the kitchen window. The maple tree in the backyard had begun losing its leaves. Thomas used to say autumn never begged summer to stay. It simply let go when it was time. I didn't do this, Daniel, I said. Your father prepared it. You activated it. He was quiet. Then he said, Vivian says Warren is trying to scare us. Warren is doing his job. Mom, this could affect Emily. I know. She just got married. I know that too. My voice did not rise. That surprised me. It seemed to surprise Daniel as well. He took a breath. Emily didn't mean anything by laughing. Vivian told her the card was harmless. I closed my eyes. There it was again. Blame moving around the room like a glass of spilled wine, touching everyone but staining no one. Daniel, I said, Emily is old enough to know when someone is being humiliated. She's young. She is married. That stopped him. For years, everyone had wanted me to treat Emily like an adult when she needed money, but like a child when she caused pain. I was finished with that kind of math. Daniel's voice cracked slightly. Mom, please. Don't take Dad's trust away from us. There it was. Not don't leave us. Not don't stop loving us. Not how can I make this right? Don't take the trust. I looked at Thomas's photograph. For a second, I saw Daniel at 8 years old, running through the backyard with grass stains on his knees. I saw the boy who used to bring me wildflowers because he thought dandelions counted. I saw every version of him I had loved before money and pride and Vivian's voice started standing between us, and I grieved him. Not because he was dead, because the boy I remembered could not answer the phone anymore. The trust was never yours to take, I said. It was your father's way of protecting what he built and the woman he built it with. Daniel did not respond. Then Vivian's voice came through the line. This is cruel, Clara. I almost laughed. But I did not give her that much of me. No, Vivian, I said. Cruel was making me the punchline at my granddaughter's wedding. This is consequence. She went silent. For once, completely silent. I continued. You will receive all communication through Warren from now on. Do not come to my house without an invitation. Do not ask me for money. Do not speak publicly about me again unless you are prepared for the full record to become public. Daniel whispered, Mom! The word hurt. Of course it did. I was still his mother. But motherhood had never required me to remain available for mistreatment. I love you, Daniel, I said, but I will not fund my own humiliation. Then I ended the call. The kitchen was quiet afterward. Not empty. Quiet. There is a difference. I picked up the place card one last time and slid it into the evidence folder. For the first time since the wedding, I did not feel embarrassed when I looked at it. I felt grateful. They had finally written down what they thought of me. And because they had written it down, they could no longer pretend I had imagined it. Tart 12. 6 weeks after the wedding, Warren called me into his office. The same bakery smell was in the lobby. Butter. Cinnamon. Warm apples. For the first time in years, I bought 2 turnovers before going upstairs. One for me. One for Thomas, though I knew I would eat it alone. Warren was waiting with a folder on his desk. He did not smile, but his face was softer than it had been the last time. The trustee has reviewed everything, he said. I sat down slowly. The place card. The email proof. The texts. Vivian's post. Emily's share. Daniel's request for honeymoon money. All of it had been submitted. All of it had been read. Warren folded his hands. Daniel's future distribution has been suspended pending a formal review. Vivian has no standing in the trust, of course, but any attempt by her to influence or pressure you will be documented. Emily's portion will be held until she meets directly with the trustee and acknowledges what happened. I looked down at my purse. I had imagined this moment many times over those 6 weeks. I thought I might feel satisfaction. I did not. What I felt was quieter, heavier, like setting down a suitcase I had carried for too long, only to realize how tired my arms had become. Will they be ruined? I asked. Warren shook his head. No, Thomas didn't design the trust to ruin anyone. He designed it to teach them that access to family wealth is not the same as ownership of a person. I swallowed hard. That sounded like Thomas. Firm, but never cruel. Before I left, Warren handed me an envelope. This came through my office yesterday, from Emily. I did not open it until I got home. I sat at the kitchen table where the place card had once rested like a wound. The afternoon light moved across the floor, touching the same cabinets, the same old clock, the same quiet rooms that had seen me cry, rage, and finally become still. Emily's handwriting was on the front. Inside was a short letter. "Grandma, I'm sorry. I knew about the card before the wedding. Mom said it was funny and that you wouldn't mind. I laughed because everyone else did. That is not an excuse. I should have stopped it. I should have thanked you properly. I don't know if you can forgive me, but I'm sorry. Not because of the trust. Because I hurt you. I read it once. Then again. Then I placed it beside Thomas's photograph. It was not enough to erase what happened. But it was the first honest thing anyone in that family had given me in a long time. Daniel's apology came later. Not in person. Not at first. A letter arrived 3 days after Emily's. It was stiff, awkward, and full of sentences that sounded like a man trying to speak without his wife handing him the words. But near the end, he wrote, "I forgot you were my mother before you were anyone's financial safety net. I am ashamed of that." That sentence stayed with me. Vivian never apologized. She sent one message through Daniel, saying she hoped we could move forward without bitterness. I did not respond. Moving forward does not always require inviting everyone to come with you. That Thanksgiving, 1 year after the wedding, I hosted dinner again. Not at the Rosewood Grand, not in a ballroom, in my own dining room. There were fewer people at the table. Warren and his wife came. My neighbor, Mrs. Holloway, brought sweet potatoes. Emily came alone and helped me set the plates. She did not try to hug me right away. I appreciated that. Daniel arrived 10 minutes late, carrying flowers. No Vivian. He stood in the doorway, looking older than I remembered. "Hi, Mom," he said. For a moment, I saw the boy with grass stains on his knees. Then I saw the man who had hurt me. Both were true. "Hello, Daniel," I said. He handed me the flowers. "I'm not here to ask for anything." I looked at him for a long moment. Then I stepped aside. "Then you can come in." Dinner was quiet at first, careful. No one mentioned the wedding. No one mentioned the trust. But when Emily passed me the cranberry sauce, her hand brushed mine and she whispered, "Thank you for letting me be here." I nodded. That was all. Forgiveness, I learned, is not a door you throw open. Sometimes it is a chair you leave at the table without promising it will always stay there. After everyone left, I washed the good china by hand. Thomas's pearls rested at my throat. The house smelled of roasted turkey and coffee. I took the old place card from the evidence folder one last time. Clara Bennett. Main sponsor. Seat wherever there's room. I looked at it without shaking. Then I tore it in half. Not because the evidence no longer mattered. Because it no longer owned me. I placed the pieces in the trash, turned off the kitchen light, and stood for a moment in the quiet house Thomas had loved. For years, I thought being needed was the same as being loved. It is not. Love does not make you earn a seat. Love does not laugh when you are humiliated. And love never asks you to pay for the privilege of being included. That night, before going upstairs, I touched Thomas's photograph and smiled. "They finally saw me," I whispered. Then I corrected myself. No, I finally saw myself. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough.